Dr. Abha. Welcome. I'm so glad you joined me today. We're going to a wedding, hence the festive attire. We'll be eating crispy, warm, juicy jalebis. They're a highly sought after dessert that you might find in the bazaars of India, on the streets, or very much at a party. I remember the first time I had a jalebi, I'm sure my eyes just went into a shock state. A well-made jalebi is crispy on the outside and has a little bit of chewiness on the inside. They can be thin or thick, and they're celebrated in this juicy syrup kissed with a little bit of cardamom and saffron. You'll have nothing like it, and after you've had one, you won't be able to stop. So I hope you join me as I show you the decadent, tasty, unparalleled dessert known as jalebi. All right, let's make the batter for the jalebi. We're going to start with a cup of white flour. We also call it maida. And to that, we're going to add a single tablespoon of besan, which is that chickpea flour. We'll just stir that together. To this, I'm going to go ahead and add a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, and that's all. I'm also going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom, and just a pinch of baking soda. So literally just take a tiny portion in your measuring vessel and put that together. Stir that together. And now we're going to add 3 full tablespoons of yogurt. I've chosen Fage, which is a Greek yogurt. It's very thick, and so I like that it's going to add a thick, creamy factor. So I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of that. That's 2, and here's 3. You got to get your fingers dirty just a little bit. I promise you I won't lick my fingers on camera. All right, and then we're going to stir that together and then add water. Now you're going to ask me, how much water does this require? You know what? We're going to start, I've got a cup measurement here. I'm just going to go ahead and stir and create my batter. It is going to take more than half a cup. We're looking at closer to 3/4 of a cup to a cup of water, and I'll give you the measurement when I'm done here. The batter will sit or rest overnight for about 10 to 12 hours. So if you want to do it in the morning to make jalebis in the evening, make sure you've given 10 to 12 hours for the batter to rest and ferment. That's really the goal here, is a fermentation. If it's really cold and you set it by the windowsill, the fermentation process will take longer. You want it to be in somewhat of a warm environment. So this is really easy to do during summer and hot and warm months. But if you're doing it in the winter months, you're probably going to need to put this by a warm space. Maybe a recently warmed up oven. It does not go in the refrigerator. It stays out, as I said, for about 10 to 12 hours to allow for fermentation. So I used more than a cup of water. I'd say a cup of water and a splash more for the 1 cup of batter that we're creating. You're going to make a nice platter full of jalebis that would serve 5 to 6 people generously. So depending on how big a party you're throwing, plan accordingly. But a cup of flour with the measurements I've described should be enough. I like the consistency of my batter. It's neither thick nor thin. And we're going to let that rest overnight. And by the morning, if it needs to get thinned out a little bit with a few drops of water, you can do that. And then you'll be ready to fry up some golden brown, deliciously sweet jalebis. For the creation of the sugar water, we'll start with half a cup of water in a pan. And to that, we'll add a full cup of sugar in order to create a thick, dense syrup. We will add a splash of lemon juice, and a good splash, in order to give a slight tart factor to this very sweet sugary syrup. We'll add a 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom, that warm, beautiful essence, and of course some saffron threads in order to complement the beauty of the cardamom. We'll allow this to simmer on the stove for a good 5 to 10 minutes. And this process will take some time. You'll see the bubbling of the water in the pan and the sugar will have dissolved, and you'll see the color of the syrup change to a golden hue. And you'll know that the syrup is ready when you place a drop of sugar water between your thumb and your index finger. And when you separate the two, you should see a thread form as you separate your thumb and your finger. That is the goal anyhow. And if you can't achieve the thread, that's okay. After 10 minutes of simmering on the stove and stirring intermittently, you will have achieved a beautiful consistency syrup. All right, so this is the fun part. We've made the batter and we've let it ferment. We have our sugary syrup waiting on the side in the wings. And let's go ahead and make our rosettes for the jalebi. I've got 2 different piping bags, so let's see which one's gonna be better for me. This one is just made out of a Ziploc bag, gallon. Let's go. We're gonna take it into the oil and we're gonna try and create a rosette that's somewhat thick because you want your jalebi to be both crispy on the outside and have an interior that becomes a little more chewy. All right, let's do the other piping bag. This is kind of a baker's bag. I'll bring it over here. And you want the rings to be touching so that they become a singular jalebi, right? A connected jalebi. So I've got 4 rosettes, as it were, and we're gonna let those cook. You really wanna manipulate heat because if it gets too hot, it'll burn. You'll cook the outside, you will not have cooked the inside. And the goal here is to crisp the exterior and still allow time for the interior to cook and allow for a chewy and memorable texture, all right? So this oil has a little bit of ghee in there. Remember how butter makes everything a little better? When you throw ghee into the canola oil or the vegetable oil, you're kicking it up to an exceptionally decadent notch. If you only want to fry in canola, you don't have ghee, you don't need ghee. It's okay. You're going to let these jalebis sit on the one side for a good 2 minutes or so, okay? And manipulating the heat, again, is exceptionally important. But allow these to cook. Can you hear the sizzle in the fry? It's great. And we're ready to flip it. Notice how you've got a nice golden brown coming through. That lets you know it's nicely crisped and you want to see that color, okay? You don't want it to be that white fleshy color, but more of a brown color. The caliber of my jalebis are still quite thin. And I don't think it's the batter. I really think it's my nozzle. It's my aperture on my piping bag. So I want you to play around with nozzle apertures because you want a little bit of density and thickness to your jalebi. I'm really liking this color. So I'm gonna go ahead and transfer from the oil to the gorgeous syrup that's thick and golden brown and simmering on low. And look at this. Look at how beautiful these jalebis are. Notice how I put some black peppercorn in there. I think it looks great. I think it adds a little bit of a smoky, sort of savory element to an exceptionally, cloyingly sweet sometimes, but decadent sweet treat. And isn't that pretty? It's almost like a spider trapped in its web, isn't it? I'm gonna let that go and put that there. That one looks particularly juicy and delicious. Now for the best part, right? We're at a party and everybody's got their place. They're talking, they're eating, and we're indulging in jalebi today. We made them with a piping bag over the fryer, put them in a syrupy, delicious golden saffron-kissed syrup, and then we adorned them further with some salty pistachios that add a touch of savory to this exceptionally sweet dish and a crunch factor. There's also a creamy malai that was made from whole milk and a little bit of whipping cream, just boiled over the burner last night. And you're allowing the skin and that thick fat to accumulate. So really, this is the fattiest part of the milk. And coupled with a jalebi, there's nothing really quite like it. I think it's time to try it. I wish you were here. Oh my gosh. Am I getting messy? Where do I begin? It's electric. To have this crispy, sweet, juicy, exceptionally sweet dessert counterbalanced with the crunch and salt of a pistachio nut, and then the cooling factor of the creamy malai, it's a home run. It's a threefer. I thought I was just going to be making jalebi today, and it turns out I've made a sweet meal. I think I better go for a run after this. Beautiful India. I can't wait to host a culinary tour someday, and I invite you all to join me, Dr. Abha, as we explore the culinary delights, historical beauty, and the ongoing exotic nature of India, one dish at a time on my culinary karma.